in the sky. In hell, there's heaven.
This is the body of a man who ate 36 eggs per day. Vince Gironda, the most famous bodybuilder of the 1950s, advocated for the use of the steak and eggs diet as the most efficient method of building muscle while staying lean. The diet is pretty self-explanatory. You only eat steak and eggs, so the carbohydrate intake is right around 0 grams per day. However, 1 day per week you can have a cheat day that is high in carbohydrates. Vince recommended this because without these high carb days, you'll experience a drop in performance in the gym. Vince used this diet himself and to train several other pro bodybuilders, most notably the 1965 Mr. Olympia champion Larry Scott. But if you're watching this, you're most likely not a pro bodybuilder, so should you listen to Vince's cheat day advice if you want to do a lean bulk? Eating carbs will fill up muscle glycogen. This glycogen stored in the muscles is important for performance, especially when training with traditional bodybuilding weight and rep ranges. However, if your goal is to minimize fat gain while maximizing muscle gains, you'd want to consume enough carbs to optimize performance. You'd also want to avoid eating them in excess so you don't put on too much fat. To understand what this ideal range is, we need to know how our bodies use and store glycogen. This study looked at subjects biking under different intensities. They found that the body becomes more dependent on muscle glycogen as exercise intensity increases. They also found that total glucose utilization remained constant at an average of 2.8 grams per minute for a 70 to 80% max intensity workout. However, this doesn't mean that they were burning 2.8 grams of glycogen per minute. While the rate of glucose utilization remained constant, the rate at which they were using their muscle glycogen declined the longer they worked out. This indicates that their bodies were still dependent on glucose during high-intensity training, but obtained it from other sources other than the glycogen in their legs. They also became more reliant on other glucose sources as their glycogen supply dwindled. So where did this glucose come from? This is the Cori cycle, and it's the body's way of ensuring that glucose is available for muscles that need it. In the short term, like in between sets, glycogen from other muscles can be broken down into glucose and shuttled into the bloodstream for energy. In the long term, like the days in between workouts, the glycogen of the muscle you use can partially get restored if you still have glycogen in other muscles, even without consuming more carbs. This is good news for people like me who skip leg day, since I don't have to worry about glycogen sitting in my legs doing nothing while my chest and biceps are empty. But what does this all mean for you? Since the body can redistribute glycogen to other muscles, you don't need to be eating lots of carbs just to make sure you can get through another workout. Personally, I agree with Vince. A low-carb, high-protein, and high-fat diet with refeed days should be the optimal protocol if you want to put on muscle while keeping fat gain to a minimum. You'll have enough carbs to make sure your performance doesn't decline, but not too much to the point where you'll be putting on loads of fat in the process. If you didn't ever have high-carb days, you'd still be able to get by with the glucose provided by the Cori cycle, but you'd never fully refill the tank. This study looked at two groups, a low-carb ketogenic diet group and a typical high-carb Western diet group. After 10 weeks of lifting, both groups put on muscle, but during the 11th week, both groups carbed up. Only the keto diet group put on muscle this week because they refilled their glycogen tanks. The keto group also lost more fat. So yes, while the body can refill muscle glycogen without the consumption of carbs, it will only do so to an extent. It will never fully refill muscle glycogen without refeeding. If you've been having trouble getting your usual amount of reps lately, it's likely that your body just can't produce as much glucose as fast as you're demanding in a given set, so it might be time for a refeed day. I'm on a zero-carb diet and lift weights every day for an hour, so a refeed feels necessary every 10 to 14 days. If you have sufficient muscle glycogen, your body can simply break it down into glucose and use it for energy. However, if you don't, your body needs to go through the time and energy expensive process of taking the lactic acid from your muscles, sending it through the bloodstream to the liver, having the liver produce more glucose, sending it back through the bloodstream to the muscle, and having it broken down again for energy. I should note that even though you might not be able to lift for higher reps with low glycogen, your initial strength shouldn't alter much. Strength has more to do with the central nervous system, and the body doesn't even use glucose for the first few seconds of a set anyway. But that's a whole different topic for another video. Simply put, if your strength on your first few reps doesn't decrease, but the amount of reps you can do does, you might want to refeed. If your initial strength decreases, it's not an excuse to eat an entire pizza. So, how much carbohydrate should you be eating on your refeed days? It's often cited that people store 100 grams of glycogen in the liver and about 400 in the muscle. Going back to the initial study, it's interesting to see that the trained subjects actually store more glycogen per gram of muscle than the untrained subjects. This is why bodybuilders can eat well over 300 grams of carbs a day and still lose weight. Not only are they constantly using their glycogen from spending hours in the gym each day, but they also have huge muscles that can store carbs extremely well. So, for the experienced lifter, you can definitely get away with 500 to 600 grams of carbs on a refeed day. If you're not, then around 400 grams for an average-sized male should have your muscles fully loaded up. Again, it all depends on your size and other factors, but you don't have to be extremely precise when thinking about how many carbs you're eating. Personally, I just eat whatever I want. At the end of the day, if you're having a cheat day or meal, it's more of a mental rest than anything, and the last thing you want to do is be stressing about your carb intake. I know Vince wasn't counting carbs on his cheat days.